All right, this one is IsRequiredKey. Implement a generic called IsRequiredKey that takes in two things, a T and a K, and then we return whether K is required keys of T. So taking the challenge, it's always easier to just take the challenge. So we see here that the second parameter is A, and the input has A and B. A is required, so we get back true.
Yep. Cool.
So finally, we have one that makes sense. Andrew and I just got back from deep object to unique, which was like we're scratching our heads about. This one, I think not so much. So it's just returning, it's a predicate. It just returns true or false if the condition matches. So for example, here, you can pass a union, A or B. It's false because B is optional. Let's look at A4. So it's true because A is not optional. Notice that this requires the distinction of whether the key is present but the value is undefined, and the difference between that and the key being optional. So sometimes we treat them the same. There's a flag in TypeScript. If you haven't, I think it's called exact optional types, something like that. If you haven't turned that flag on, you're making a big mistake. I wish they would have added it to strict mode, but they decided it was too strict for strict mode. But okay, Andrew, where would you start with something like this?
Okay, so I'm thinking we probably want to like map over T, I think. And
okay,
so I know there's ways you can like change, like in a mapped type, you can like change whether the key is optional or whether it's read-only or not. Like you can add and remove those properties of the key, I guess, if you want to call them that. But I'm trying to think about how we can actually check to see if the key itself is, like what the current state of the key is. And I guess we could probably use extends here. So I'm curious to know what would happen if we said, like, does T extend like
required?
And yeah, I guess required would be the right thing for that.
So like we can look at the values. We have to look at the values because that's the whole point of it. So
yep.
Something like this.
Yeah, so I guess that's saying make everything in T required and then see does T of K still equal T of K. Okay. I was getting tripped up. This makes sense to me, I think. I was getting tripped up by the fact that we had to support unions here, I think. But yeah, this I think should work, right?
It works.
Nice.
They all pass.
That's really elegant. I love that.
I'm really happy that you explained it the way you did. So while you were talking, I was they have quite a lot of alternatives to show, and they're all fairly simple, but they're pretty fun. And I was looking for the one that was what you were describing, and the description you gave matched the most elegant one, which I think is this one. So this is by, let's put it on the screen here. This is by Drylint on GitHub. Drylint has also, it's funny, I know all these people. There's like only around 10 people who have solved all of the challenges. So as I look through solutions, I've come to appreciate their approaches to things. So yeah, this one is exactly, I think you sort of described it. That's the one. We have Team Chong here. Team Chong is also a prolific solver of the challenges. What do you think about this one? This uses that syntax you were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking of. So we're using the equal to helper type here to see if. Oh, nice. Okay, so for each key, yeah. To be honest, this is probably a little closer to what I was thinking.
Oh, okay.
But I definitely like the first one better. Yeah. So for each key, we remove the optional flag there, and then just compare, is the object the same? It's essentially, I mean, I don't know much about what's like going on behind the scenes in TypeScript, but like looking at it, it reads to me very similar to the first one, just with just less readable, I think.
Yeah, it's funny, as you get harder and harder in these challenges, this equal helper type becomes much more important over time. But yeah,
because it's not just doing like the same extends check that we have below.
This one is by Human Detail. We got all the celebrities from the challenges. This person has also done. I think we still have Yingsung Meta, and anyway, there's more. But how about this one? This one it splits it up into two steps, like with a helper type. We still have our equal required keys and K. So we're actually, this is important to anyone looking, like this key of here is very critical. So it's not actually returning an object, it's returning a union of keys.
So one thing that I'm wondering here is, let's say the K that we pass in doesn't include all of the required keys. Is this still going to work? Because it feels like the required keys, like helper type that we create here, is going to return like a union of all of the required keys.
So let's try.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will. You're correct. It will return false if it's not all of the required keys.
Okay, cool. I do like this one. So we're looping over all the keys. I love the use of like the mapping, like using as there to use never. I recently actually was using this just earlier this week. I kind of came across this technique and found it really helpful. Nice.
Cool. I like this one too. It's nice to split things up. It's not my favorite. I think Drylint, this one here is still my favorite, but maybe we'll have a contender. Sure. So Just Bad Programmer on GitHub used some temporary storage in order to kind of save the time. I think this is probably a case where you could inline it if you really wanted to, and then it becomes a lot more like the others. But I think it was just interesting to show that you can. That's really the point of this showing this alternative, is just that you can make it read a little nicer by storing it as a variable, because it might be confusing to people, like if it's exactly the same or if it's like one character different, something like that.
And again, this is like roughly pretty similar to Drylint's approach. Cool.
Yep. And then we have Yingsung Mehta, who is the author of the challenge. So I think this is the most complicated. When we get into a situation where we have to do this kind of thing, it's usually like maybe take a step back and think about what you could do. I mean, the guts of it is here, right? If you compare.
Yeah, and it feels like we're checking twice that K extends key of T, right? Both in the generic parameter itself.
Yep.
And then also inside the type. And so I feel like we could drop the one inside the type, because we're going to get that checked.
And indeed we can. I mean, that refactor is basically Drylint's, I think, in a way. Except he's checking at the value level instead of like comparing the objects. Okay, and then there are two nopes. Let me grab them. So I think it's always nice to see these and see where they fail. So where they fail, let's just look at the first one. If we scroll up to the top, we see that they fail to understand the difference between the value being present, but or the key being present, but the value is undefined, and the value being optional. And they both have that flaw. So it would have been nice if this was doable, but unfortunately, if the value of T at a particular K is undefined, then we'll get undefined, and then, oh well.
Do these work if you mentioned a flag at the beginning of this challenge, like for your TypeScript config?
Yep.
Do these work if you have that enabled?
I suppose they would. I don't know. That's a tough question. I mean, I try to pretend that flag is on for all times. Like, it's weird. There's a subset of TypeScript that doesn't make any sense. Like, everybody uses strict null checks, but like I once was in a code base recently that doesn't have strict null checks on, and I was like so turned around, because it's something you come to get accustomed to.
For sure.
I'm gonna plead the fifth on that one. Please don't do that. Please just turn the flag on, and it's the right move. It does really matter. I think there are situations in JavaScript where it doesn't matter, but like, let's say you're doing object.keys. Well, object.keys will return a key if the value, if I say, if I have A, let's just go up here. If I had this thing here that's passed into A1, and I did object.keys, I'm going to get back an array with A and B. Even if one of these things is, I'm just explaining this wrong. Even if B is undefined, it'll still be present in object.keys, right? So, I don't know. Okay, well, this was a fun one, kind of like a nice break. I'm not sure this really belongs in the hard set, but oh well, some of the hard ones are much harder. Oh well.